Hello, welcome to Elegant Vellum Flowers on Home Decor today with Heartfelt Creations. If you and I have not met yet, my name is Andrea. It's so good to see you today and thank you for joining me for this class. I want to give you a couple tips for having a great class. And as I'm just starting to go over this, go ahead and pop on and say hello. I'd love to see that you're here and hear where you're from. That'd be awesome. So as we're just getting started, you may find yourself a beginner crafter, maybe you're an advanced crafter, maybe somewhere in between. That is wonderful. We're so glad to have you. One thing that a lot of our crafters find that really helps to make a good crafting experience with these classes is to go ahead and watch along with me today, ask clear questions, get those answered, and then most crafters go back and watch the video, the replay, pause me to go ahead and create the project themselves. So that's totally up to you if you want to craft along with me today or if you want to wait. But we will go ahead and just let you know a couple supplies that you might want that maybe got missed. So it's always nice to have a Hydro Sponge, Pop Dots, and foam strips. Those are optional for you, but you might find that they're super helpful for today's class. And then just a couple items that I think might have gotten missed on the list. You may want the lilac shaping mold, definitely the large circle die, and then possibly the Just For You and For My Friends sentiments. And we can talk about the sentiments a little bit more deeper into the class to see if those are something that you want, or maybe you decide to choose a different sentiment. So let's go ahead and just look at the project that we're going to be doing. Hi Candace, thanks for joining. Denise, good to see you. Hi Chantel and Janet and June. It's really hot in Louisiana, oh my. Well, thank you so much for joining today. Hopefully you're inside staying cool. This is the layout, or I would say home decor piece that we're going to be using today. And you can see that it has a lot of different elements going for it. It has some beautiful vellum flowers that we're going to be using, and we can teach you how to use the vellum, just kind of the ins and outs of that, how to arrange them. But then we're also doing a lot of kind of layering with this piece, and so we're going to really focus on that as well. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. The first thing that we want is we actually want kind of maybe a chipboard kind of a piece that's 13 by 13. Now, if this is something that you don't have, you can actually make one yourself. So, you know, when you buy our paper pads, we've got these great paper pads. They usually have a little bit of a cardboard underneath. So what you can do, if you have the current ones here, they've got a little hole at the top. That's totally fine. This means that they are about 12 inches this way, and then 12 and a half this way with the hole. It just gives a little bit more depth. So what I typically like to do, and you have two options, you could take another piece and just go ahead and glue it on top, and it would be a little thicker in some areas than others, but mostly you wouldn't be able to tell. The other thing you can do is you could cut a 1/2 inch strip, you could cut your 1 inch strip, and then do the exact same thing again to layer, and that way it would go on top of there, and it would just really create a sturdy 13 by 13. So hopefully that kind of helps. You know, you can kind of finagle these to make them work if you don't have a 13 by 13 available. So we've got this piece, and we want to first and foremost go ahead and add some strips of beautiful cardstock. So what we're using today, we're actually using the Floral Fashionista collection. This is a great one. We're going to use it for all that we're doing. It has lots of different kind of mauves, some kind of roses and greens. So that is what we're working with first, and that will be the paper that we're doing. So the first pieces that we have here are going to be 4 strips. You can see that they have the really rich color, and these are actually 1 inch wide by 12 inches long. So what we can do, we want to take some of our Dries Clear glue. I don't know, I would think that probably you have this at home. This is definitely one of our favorites if you add the precision tip, just because it dries so quickly and you don't end up seeing all the glue. So 1 inch by 12 inches. And what we want to do is we want to put this on the edges. And what I would recommend, what I noticed when I was just putting mine together the other day, sometimes they still don't fit quite exact. And Denise, where can you buy a 13 by 13 chipboard? I would assume that you could probably head on over to your local craft store and they would probably have something that's an option. And if they didn't have chipboard, they might have like a plywood kind of a piece that you might be able to use as well. So I would check someplace like that. Otherwise, like we were saying, you could go ahead and you could make something nice and sturdy with the backs of your paper. So hopefully that is helpful, Denise. Okay, so like I was saying here, we're gluing this on, and sometimes I find, I don't know about you, I do not always measure things super well, or maybe I should say, I don't always cut things super well when I'm measuring. So what I find sometimes is when I go to add my next piece, sometimes it still doesn't quite match. And so what I'd like to see happen with this one, and I want to make sure that you can really see this, is there's a little bit of extra space here. That is okay. I would prefer that you have it flush with the edges because this part here is going to get covered. So we'll do that with all 4 pieces. There we go. Just a little bit more glue. We'll add that to the next side. Thank you so much for the recommendations of where you're getting your chipboard. That is super helpful. I really appreciate that. I know chipboard can always be kind of that tricky thing of where do you find it? What do you do with it? I love it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, this is just your base. It just really gets us started. The next thing we want to do is we're going to create some great decorative pieces on our corners. So for the remainder of this class, we're actually going to be using the deluxe flower shaping paper. This one here is a pack of 25. I'm sure you're already familiar, but if you use a lot of this, we have a pack of 50 that's available too. And so this is great for our flower shaping, but it's also great when you die cut. So the piece that we're going to use today is the frame a card leafy borders, and we are going to cut out, there's a few different ones we're doing. So there's a 1x7 piece, which is going to be the largest. We're cutting out 6 of those. And then we're also doing the 1x5, which would kind of be not the large, not the medium, the small. And we're cutting out 18 of those. So there are quite a few, but let me show you why and how we're doing that. So when you go to cut this one out, there are 2 pieces to do this. You have the inside, which gives you the pattern, and then you have this lovely kind of outside piece, which is going to allow you to actually cut the whole thing out. Now, when you go to actually cut this on your paper, one thing I highly recommend is taking a little bit of tape and making sure that you're centering this how you like it, and you're taping it in place because we're cutting out a lot of these and we want to be sure that when we're cutting them out that they're all exactly the same or as close to the same as we can get them, so that way we aren't finding when we glue them together that we have some that have tons of space on the bottom, some that have tons of space on the top, because we want to glue them together. So when we're doing that, you can see here I do already have a few cut out. We're doing 3 of the same kinds and gluing them together. Now, when I do this, I don't do the whole thing. I like to hit some of the edges, not tons and tons, but just some of the edges. And then I just hit a couple different spots on the leaves so that way it will stick. And let's just go ahead and put that on top. The reason that we're doing this, that we're layering, and I'm sorry, I did not say this at the beginning of class. I want to make sure that you know this class was designed by our very own Rajni, and she creates some really beautiful projects, and I just want you to know that she designed it because it's so beautiful. I don't want to take credit for something that she did. She is an amazing, talented designer, and so this is her creation that I'm teaching you today. So I just want to be sure that you are aware of that. So if you're loving it, you can make sure to pop some comments on and let her know how much you love it. So the reason that we're doing this, she designed this to have the 3. A lot of times what I kind of assume with this is that it really creates a little bit of a different look for us. It's creating more dimension. So instead of something that's just super flat, because this is more of a decor piece, this is going to allow a little bit more dimension on this piece, making a sturdier cutout as well. Okay, so we've got this done. Now we are ready to go ahead and give a little bit of quick color. So let's use one of these here to color on. So after you have them done, you should end up with 2 of them that are long, and you will end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 that are short. And there are 3 layers for each. So then we want to go ahead and take a little bit of the archival ink. This is magenta hue. And of course we want to use some of our fun little triangle daubers. If you haven't used these before, they are stackable. They're triangular to get into some tiny detailed areas. So what we're doing with this is we're just going to take a little bit of the ink. Sometimes it's good to just kind of dab it off a little bit on your scrap paper to make sure you're not getting too much if you don't want a lot. And then just lightly going over the entire piece on all of these to give it a little bit of color. Now it's okay if it's a little bit whiter in some areas or a little bit pinker in some areas. That is totally fine because it is just kind of giving us more depth with the color. And we're going to add glitter to these so you won't notice. Okay, so there we've got that. We're ready to add a little bit of glitter as well. So I'm going to pull out another one of these. The reason that I suggested a Hydro Sponge today is because sometimes when we are adding glitter and we want it more of an overall coverage, it's nice to be able to put it on the Hydro Sponge and kind of squish that together and then go over the entirety of the piece. Now on these, what I'm actually using today is the frosting powder, and this is actually Rajni's product as well. The frosting powder is nice because it's kind of a chunky glitter. It's an ultra fine glitter. It's got some glass shards to it. The other thing that I really like about it with the frosting powder, it kind of has more of a white powder to it. I want to say maybe it's more like an embossing powder. And so if you're looking for something that's more of shabby chic or something a little more wintry, it's a wonderful option to give you that. So after you do all of those, we can see them all done. They're all nice. Oops, we gotta do this one too. I wanted to show you the small one. But you can see just how quickly the color and then the glitter comes together on these. Really transforms the white, beautiful frame. So let's go ahead and just add a little bit of glue on this one as well. And you'll have to tell me, is this a die that you've used a lot? Have you ever layered it like this before? It's fun to kind of hear if these are new techniques or something that you're super excited about learning that new, just little technique there. Okay, so there we have all of those done. So now we want to go ahead and add them to our project. Let's make sure to cap our glue. We'll use it again, but you don't want it to clog. So I'm gonna just set these off to the side here so we can get these out of the way. And what we're doing on this, we're actually doing one short one, and then the same thing in the opposite corner, a short one, and a short one down here. The thing that's gonna be a little bit different is that we're using one long one on the right bottom corner and then a short one going upward. And then something kind of similar, we're doing the long one on the left top corner and a short one going across. So it's just creating a little bit of a difference. Liz, you've never used the frame die, but it's very pretty. It is really pretty. I think that there's a lot you can do with it as well. So this is just one of many, many ways that I've seen it used. So just something fun, isn't it? Okay. And Denise, you haven't used yours yet. Hey, you know what? That happens. It happens to us all. Hopefully this will inspire you that you can create with it yourself at home now. Marion, if it has glass shards in it, do we have to be careful not to be cut? You know, Marion, I always feel like with glass shards, you definitely do want to take a little bit of precaution. I really haven't heard people have problems with them. I tend to be a little bit klutzier, and so I mean, I have gotten scratched by them, but I haven't gotten hurt. I think that most of the time, especially on a piece like this, it's something that's going to add a lot of glitz and a lot of beauty, and it is going to be sitting on a shelf, and so I think it's pretty safe. When you go to glue it down, you'll just want to be cautious not to just really put a lot of pressure or scrape against it. Okay, so we're just gluing these down. Again, we're gluing it the same way we would have glued to add the layers, and just adding a little bit to it, putting it in place. And this, just like we were saying, it's covering over top of the maroon, kind of the maroon look, and just going straight to the corner. And you know, I just want to say what I'm noticing as I'm doing this, I might have said the wrong direction on the mauve paper. I'm thinking probably you did want them to come together and have the the black showing on the side. But if you can really see this, let me kind of push these over so you can get a better view. You really can't tell that much. You can kind of see that's where the little bit of extra black would have been. And it's so minor that depending on what you're doing, probably most people won't notice it. So that's up to you whether you're doing it the one way or the other. Just want to make sure that you have that option. And of course, as you're crafting, sometimes you can kind of see those things as you get going. Okay, let's just make sure to pop these in. Hi, Carol. Hi, is it Floressa? It's so good to see you. It's totally fine that you're running late. We're not very far, and the great thing is, just like normal, you can always watch the replay. So we're just kind of getting started, adding our frames to frame this piece, gluing them down. We talked a little bit about chipboard. Okay. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I just like to hold my die cut in place for just a couple seconds just to be sure that it is staying where I want it. We're almost there with this part. I'm sure you are anxious to see the next step. Okay, there's that one. We could use hot glue on this part, but since this is a more delicate piece, I feel like it would be a little bit easier to see the glue coming through, and that's why I'm using the Dries Clear. Because even if there's too much, we are not going to see it. There we go. And one more. I would love to hear, what are you most excited about learning on this class? Is it the whole piece? Is it the vellum flowers? Is it the layering? I'd love to hear that. Yes, Liz, you can barely notice that. Yes. Yeah, you could actually barely notice the frames. We didn't cut them out of foam paper. We actually layered 3 layers of cardstock, of the shaping cardstock. You could do foam paper if you wanted. It will have a little bit different consistency, just a little bit different look, but you could totally do that. It would look beautiful that way too. Okay, so the next step that we're going to do, we want to go ahead and work with, we have 1 sheet of this beautiful paper. Now this is the step where we want to go ahead and grab our Score Pal. I don't know if you have one of these. They are definitely a great piece to have. You can do a lot with them. I don't know if you can see this super well. I went ahead and I already scored. If you look at it this way, there's lines going down it this way. So we're doing them all one direction, and then we're going to do them the other direction. I'm doing it on the back side. And this is a part where there's not going to be a ton of rhyme or reason. Everybody's excited about the flower placement and the vellum flowers. Good, good. This is going to be a lot of fun. The vellum flowers are awesome. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to go ahead and just start scoring. Now, I know that this is going to be a little hard for some people, but I am not being super specific with this. So I am just kind of picking some spaces, and maybe I'll do 3 right next to each other, and then I'll leave some space, and then do 2 or 3 next to each other. The idea is to kind of give some texture and give a little bit of a different look with this paper. And that's why we're doing both directions to create that, but it does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be exactly the same. So like right now I'm doing every 1/4 of an inch, then maybe I'm skipping 1/2 an inch, do another 1/4 of an inch. So you can see, just kind of add a few here and there to create more of a textured, I would call it more of a, like a plaid look. And it has all of them marked. It has the groove in there, so you can just go ahead and drag it all the way down. And we're almost there with this one. Just kind of anywhere and everywhere. I'm not even really looking at the numbers, just kind of looking at the spacing for myself. Okay, so I know that it's a little hard to see, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of color so that way it pulls it out. So I did some vertical and horizontal. We did both. I'm actually going to get my score palette out of the way, and then we're going to be taking the archival ink in Plum. So with this one, I'm going to make sure to put something under so we don't get our actual page. I'm just going to kind of lightly take this over my page, and it's just going to pull out some of those lines. And I'm just being really gentle because I don't want to end up with the edges of the ink pad or anything like that. Okay? You can, I mean, if you want, you can add a little bit darker here or there. So hopefully now you can really see that well. See how much that brought those out? Mary Lynn, yes. You have trouble with them splitting and the embossing powder cracking off. Awesome. I know that's not a fun thing, but we'll talk about that today. Okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and glue this onto a 12 by 12. I would say the back of your paper again. 12 by 12 is perfect for this. And what it's gonna do is it's just gonna create something really nice and sturdy. So we'll just go ahead. I'm gonna just kind of be liberal with this, but not necessarily a rhyme or reason. It's okay if you get a little too much or a little here or there, just kind of wherever. Oops, I just poked myself with the pin. You gotta be careful with those. Okay, so let's go ahead and glue this right on. Okay. So that part is ready to go. So now what I want to do is I actually want to flip this over and use some pop dots just to get some dimension with this piece. You can put as many or as few pop dots as you like. I typically tend to add more with something like this just because I want to be sure that I'm keeping that dimension. And I don't know if you struggle with your pop dots. I always like to talk about this because what I like to do is just kind of dig my fingernail under there, and it really just helps to pop that piece off. I've had some people say tweezers. There are lots of different options. Yes, wasn't that technique fun on that paper? I really enjoyed that. You could do that on your cards. You can do it on your layouts. There's a lot of different ways you could use that technique. Okay, there's 2 more we need to pop off. Okay, so we'll go ahead, and it doesn't matter, any of these ways will work. What we want to do is we want to center this with our paper, so that way we can see our frames on each side. Push down. Okay, so we've got the base. So the next thing we're going to work on is creating the layering. So we're going to go ahead and use this piece of paper first. Now what I want to say is that they're not all going to be exactly the same. They never will be, and that is totally fine. So what you want to do is we're going to go ahead and just start to kind of tear it. So we're going to start here at the top, and you can see it. I'm leaving about maybe 1.5 inches, and we're going to kind of tear downward at an angle, okay? Sometimes you're going to get a lot of white, sometimes you're not. So there you can see I've got that. You can save this piece for later. You might still be able to use it depending on what you're working on. And then we're going to do the same thing down here. And this is why I say, hey, it's never going to be 100% the same, because on the one that I created, you can see there's not a lot on the bottom coming out, whereas this one I have quite a bit more. So it just depends on how you tear it, and just creates a little bit of something different. So sometimes if there's a lot of white, sometimes I will kind of go back in and tear off a little bit extra. And then what we want to do is we want to do something very similar with this one. So this is actually just 6 by 12 inches, so it's half a sheet of paper. So I'm going to just kind of tear across. You can kind of see that. So we can kind of just put it underneath and kind of see, okay, how do we like this? Is it looking like we want it to? Do we want to change it a little bit? I actually kind of like how that one turned out, so I feel pretty good about that. This one here then will kind of pop up here to kind of take a look. How do we feel? It does pretty good. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes you'll want to tear in a little bit more. That's just up to you. Now, I don't know if you've ever done some distressing or not with your papers. I'm using just a distressing tool here. We can also use a pair of scissors, and I'll show you both. Even though we've already kind of distressed these, I'm going to just run my distressor over it just to get a little bit more of a distressed look. You can see it's going to pull out the white a little bit on here. Just gives something more to look at. Okay, we'll do the same thing on the other green one. And sometimes it needs a little bit, sometimes it needs a lot more. So if we were doing this with the scissors, we would just kind of open them up and kind of run it along, depending on how you're doing it. And if you get kind of like those little tear marks, that's okay. It just creates something a little different. Okay. So what we'll do is we're going to just go ahead and take our magenta hue ink pad, and I want to give this a little bit of color on the edges, so I can just kind of run a little bit on the edge there to give that. Just something quick. You don't have to do it over the entire thing, but you can do it on different places. And then we'll do the same thing with the green ones, but with the plum. So again, this just kind of gives us just some different texture, different color to look at on this piece. Okay, so there we've got that. Then we are going to go ahead and use our finger dauber with the magenta hue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to add some color onto this. Now, if you aren't quite ready, if you don't feel comfortable with just adding it anywhere, that's okay. You can wait until you've already added your photo. But the idea is that our photo is going to be somewhere around here. So I want a little bit of color coming out the top. And if you want also, you could go ahead and use your ink pad. What I noticed when I use this, I don't know if you can see that, it tends to give me a little bit more lines. So you'll just have to decide whether you want kind of more of an overall look or whether you're okay getting a few lines on your project. And what I would do is I would just test it, honestly, test it a little bit on another piece of paper before you start to use it on here. So that way you know for sure. And we could add a little bit more of this color later if we needed to as well. But I'm just kind of adding it in places where it's going to peek out from the photo. Okay, so there I've got that. Let's go ahead and start to glue these together. I'm probably just going to add a little bit of glue, hot glue probably, just to make it go a little faster when I want it to stick. I'll kind of peek that out. And probably what I'll do is I'll turn it the other direction so I can see that coming. Okay, so there's that one. So then the next one, gotta be careful. Sometimes that hot glue bleeds out. We'll add just a little bit of hot glue on the back of that one. And then again, kind of put it on there so we can see how that's gonna come out. There's not 100% right or wrong with this particular part. Okay, now what I can see here is that it's poking up just a little bit, so I'm gonna just tear off a little bit more there. the scoring technique and cracking. You know what, Linda? If you are pushing really, really hard, it can crack. So what you want to do is just make sure you're giving pressure to get that line, but not so much that you're digging in that it's going to tear it. So I would, again, that might be something that you could go ahead and just take a small piece and try it a couple times to make sure you kind of have that pressure before you start. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to use the Sweetheart Borders. This is a beautiful piece. We've used it on cards, we've used it on layouts, and the one that we're using today is this one here. We're cutting out 4 of these with our lovely cardstock deluxe flower shaping paper. And you can see I've got the 4 of them here. The idea with this is to be able to kind of tuck them in. And I don't know if you noticed, but I did not glue, like when I hot glued these pieces together, I didn't glue them right on the edge, so that way I could still tuck a little bit if I wanted to. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tuck one full one kind of under here. And again, this is one of those spots where you can do as much or as little as you like. Maybe you'll say, hey, I only want to use 2. That's fine. I think I'm going to put one under there, and then I think I'm going to maybe put one here. And this one is maybe just a little bit different from the one I did before, but that's okay. So on this one, we'll just add a little bit of glue to this little base part here. Just glue that on. I'm going to add a little bit of glue on both sides of this one since it's gluing in between. There we go. And then of course on the back of this one. Okay, so there's the top. And now we'll do the bottom. So this one, I think I'm gonna have it peek out over here. And the reason that I said kind of, you know, maybe you want 2, maybe you want 4. We did 4, but depending on how you tear the paper, like that's part of what I feel like determines where these are gonna go and how you're gonna like them, because depending on how it tears, it gives you a completely different look. Let's just see if I can trim off just a little bit of that so it pops out the side here. And then we'll do some on the other side here as well. Okay, what do you think of this so far? Are you enjoying it? What do you like about it? And then I'm actually gonna put just a little bit peeking out down here too. Okay, so there is that piece and that look. Now before I glue this on, I do want to do the back of this, and I want to show you this up close. What you're seeing here is we're kind of seeing some areas up here that are a little bit darker, and then we're seeing a little bit of sparkle. And so let's just go ahead and add that real quick so that way it's done. We are going to use a little bit of our plum ink again. And we can use, I decided to use a Hydro Sponge on this just because I felt like it worked a little bit nicer for what I was doing. And I'm just going to do a couple places with a little extra color, just like we did on the other piece. And this is just creating a more distressed piece. And you don't have to do a lot. Maybe this is something you'll want to add a lot of, maybe not a lot. You love the distressed look and how each piece turns out differently. Yes, that's pretty nice, isn't it? It really allows you to make something that's your own. Okay, so there's that. Now we're going to use a little bit of crystal clear on this part. So the reason that I'm using something a little bit different is because the crystal clear doesn't have the powder in it. So it's just going to give us a little bit of a different look. You could use the frosting powder. It would just give you more of a white kind of a look. And then I'm just kind of putting it a couple different places. Just a little bit here and a little bit there. I know it's a little weird to be doing glitter this early, right? But it's easier to apply this particular glitter now than later. So just adding a little bit, and then we'll add a little bit on the bottom. we better go ahead and put some of this into our catcher here. Okay. We'll put a little bit down here, maybe some over here. You can add as much or as little as you like of this. Okay. Let's do it this way. Do you ever have that? You don't want the glitter everywhere, but where do you put it? And then honestly, one thing I did, just because it is kind of clustered, I kind of took my piece, looked at where it was, and then I might have even kind of gone back with my sponge just a little bit to kind of get off the extra. So you'll have to kind of see, how does that work for you? Is that how you're liking it? We just tap this off a little. Okay, so now we're going to glue this large piece on. I'm using hot glue. I'm using hot glue because it's something that is going to very quickly set for us. And it's ready to go. And just be careful, hot glue is very hot. Okay, that is all glued in place. Okay, so let's go ahead and start building this. The next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and take a couple pieces of paper to create our frame. So this first one here is 5 inches by 6 3/4. And there you can see we're actually doing a little bit of the distressing again. And this way, with this particular paper, you can really see it nicely because it's nice and maroon, and then we can add the distressing and we start to see a little bit more of the white from underneath. Okay, so there's that piece. Then we do have this polka dot piece that is going to go on top, and this one is 4 inches by 6 1/4. We'll glue these right together. There we go. Then we have 4 1/8 by 5 3/4, and this is just a white cardstock. And then the photo that you want to do is going to be just a smidge smaller than that. So normally you'd pick a 4 by 6. You're going to have to cut just a little bit off of your 4 by 6 for this. So this one we're going to do of Richard and Emma Lou from one of their fun trips. The one that I showcased a little bit ago was actually my in-laws. So this is something that you could change your paper, change your photos, change your sentiments to really change the occasion. Such a fun gift or home decor piece. Okay, so those are all glued together. Now, one thing, if we wanted to continue with some of the distressing and stuff, you could go back and add just a little bit of maybe your magenta or your plum to some of these areas that are distressed, and you can do that before or after. So then we want to go ahead, put this right down on top. You can use pop dots or you can use foam strips. It will depend on some of the dimension that you're wanting. I'm just going to use a couple foam dots for this part. And one thing, and I want to make sure that you can really see this part. I know that it doesn't come through quite as well, but can you kind of see some of this down here or maybe up here? It kind of looks like maybe like a little bit of a moss, something that's kind of fibery. Well, what I found out, Rajni does this on some of her pieces, and I really, really love it. What she does is she takes a piece of, I would call this maybe like twine, and what you do is you just start to take it apart. So like, okay, so we've got some pieces off, and then you basically shred it with your fingers, and then it's something that you can add for those tiny detailed areas, and just creates kind of a different, unique look. Okay? And so the reason I say that is because I want to kind of put some underneath this photo. And so I want to kind of have an idea of where I want some of that to go beforehand. So that way I am able to still put it there. So probably some a little bit on the top and maybe some a little bit coming out the bottom. Kind of check and see where that would come out. So that way maybe I can add just a little bit of hot glue to keep it in place. There we go. Have you ever used something like this before? I personally haven't, but I know for me, it's something that I'm going to add quite a bit of now. So I would love to hear if this is something that you're gonna add on your cards and layouts quite a bit. And you wouldn't have to do it with the brown. You could do it with pinks or yellows just to give a little bit of something extra. Okay, so I'm just peeling off these Pop Dots and we're gonna stick this down. And let's go ahead and put it right about there. So it's lining up with the edge of the 12 by 12 that's there. You're definitely gonna use this, Teresa. Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Okay, so the next thing I wanna do is I want to use the Elegant Pocket Accents. This one has a few different dies in it. The one that we're doing here today is this piece, and you're actually cutting out 6 of these and doing the same technique that we did before. You're layering 3 and layering 3. So you're gonna end up with 2 of these pieces, and we're going to wanna add a little bit of color to them then. So we're actually going to use the light leaf green, and definitely with this, we want to be sure that we are dabbing it off because we want a very light look. We don't want this to be super, super vibrant, but we're just going over the whole thing. There we go. You can kind of see that. And again, just like on our edges, it's okay if we're not getting it completely green and then some areas are a little bit darker or some are a little lighter. Totally fine. Love the variation. If you like it to be a little bit more uniform, that's fine. You can go ahead and just take a little more time with your daubers to do this. Then of course we are going to, once again, take our sponge with some glue, and we are going to sponge over this with the frosting powder to get this all beautiful and glittery. Might need a little more glue. Okay, so then some frosting powder. And again, the frosting powder is just giving us kind of more of a shabby chic or even a lighter look since it's adding a little bit of white as well. You can already see the glitz happening there. Okay, so there we have that one as well. You don't do anything uniform since you retired from the Air Force. I love that, Virginia. Hey, that sounds great. You gotta do you, right? Okay, so we want to go ahead and glue these in place. So the idea here is to glue one kind of coming out the bottom and one going up the top. So I think I'm gonna do it maybe a little more like that. You can arrange it however you like it, but I am adding just a little bit of hot glue for this. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to put flowers on top. So even if I get a little bit of extra glue, you won't notice. Okay, so there's that. Let's go ahead and do our circle that goes on this side. This is where I told you you may want the large as well as the small. And the reason I said that is because we're cutting out with the small one, there's a 4x4. It's kind of a lacy looking circle. You're cutting out 3 of those and gluing them together like we have been doing so that it's nice and sturdy. But with the circle basics, what you actually want to do, we want to use the largest and the second largest. And the reason that we're doing that, as you can see with this one here, we used the small for the outer edge, and then this, we've got the larger one from the large to cut out the photo and to cut out a nice piece of paper just to make it sturdier and back it. But we have this smaller one that is going to cut out the actual inside circle. So that smaller one, let's just make sure you can see that one again, is the 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. It just makes a nice open window. After you use those, you want to add a little bit of color like we've been doing with the magenta hue, and then go ahead and let's just start gluing. So we have our paper circle that we're gluing our photo on. And when you do go to cut out your photos, I like to be sure that there's not extra pieces of other die cuts on my cutting boards, because otherwise you might end up getting some of those on your photo and it could create dents. So you don't want to do that. And add a little bit of glue around there to glue on here. There we go. So this piece is good and ready to go. So then what we want to do is go ahead and tuck it on here. Now again, what you'll notice is that depending on how you're tearing your paper and how these go, that could move this piece just a little bit, but that's totally fine. So we're going to put it probably about right here on this one. So what I like to do, just because there is a little bit of depth difference, is we're going to add 2 pop dots on this side that it can meet up with. Okay, and then just a little bit of hot glue on the one side, and I'm even going to put just a little bit on the pop dots to make sure that everything catches. Okay. And I'm just going to tuck that in place for a couple seconds. And there's that. It's ready to go. So I think that we're at a great spot that we can go ahead and start to work on flowers. I'm sure that you have been anxious for that. So I'm just going to set this behind me for just a few minutes while we work on flowers. And we'll just go ahead and just get started and jump right in. Now I will tell you as we're getting started, I'll remind you at the end as well, but as a thank you for taking this class, you are going to receive a free die with a $100 purchase, and you'll be able to use code 135314 to do that, and it's going to expire July 5th. So when you're done with this class, if there's some items you know you're missing, you definitely want to check that out and take advantage of that free die before the 5th. And I'll remind you again at the end of class. So what we're going to use here is this lovely, lovely vellum. Now, I don't know if you're super familiar with our vellum. In the past, we had a vellum that was, I would say maybe 29 pound weight. It was very thin. And so I know people kind of did struggle with the cracking and trouble with the embossing powder. Now this one here we started using, and this is also by Rajni. She has used this and we've been lucky enough to bring it into the company, and it is just wonderful. It is much thicker. I want to say maybe it's somewhere around 40 pounds, but don't quote me on that because it translates a little bit differently. But it's just a much sturdier, very high quality vellum. So I do have a little bit of that here. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and use our Classic Rose stamp, and I'm going to be using this one here. This is the largest one, so we're going to start with that. So I've got that here. Right now, we still have the Color Box Pigment Ink. This is Frost White available. This is wonderful. So what I'll say is that this vellum with this ink, with this wonderful embossing powder, this is Stampendous embossing powder, and it is a white. These three have been kind of the key to successful vellum flowers and shaping. Now, let's go ahead and just ink this up so you can see it. Definitely you want, if for some reason you don't have that one, you just want to be sure you have some really high quality embossing powder. Okay, so I've got that completely inked. Go ahead and cap that. I will stamp it. Make sure I have all the pressure. You purchased the new vellum. Good. Virginia, you need the vellum. Yes, you do. It is really, really nice vellum to work with. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and use one of these guys to catch my extra. But we'll go ahead and put a little bit of this embossing powder on. Now, what I want to say, if for some reason you're not familiar with heat embossing, the pigment ink is nice and sticky. So it is going to, it's not going to dry quickly. So you don't want to touch it because it will smudge. And then once you get your embossing powder onto the ink, it will stick, and you don't want to touch it again because it will wipe away the powderiness. Let's just go ahead and pop some of this back in here so it's out of the way. But yes, if you wipe off that powder, then that area is not going to heat emboss. So just make sure not to do that. And then you will take your heat gun of your choice. And I know that this is going to be maybe a little hard to see. Maybe we could get in a little bit closer on that, so that way You can see we just want it to go from kind of a dusty to a glossy look. Actually, you can see it really well on the right side. I don't know if you can see it on the screen though, but it's just turning into a nice bright white look. Now definitely be careful with your fingers because it does get hot. In fact, it's a little hot now. Let me see if I have a tweezers in here. Sometimes that can be your friend when you are heat embossing. If you grab a little tweezers, you can hold the paper with it. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it definitely is an option if your fingers are getting in the way. And you just want to really, if you can't see it very well, you want to move it to a different angle to make sure that you did get it all done. Let's see. Did we get it all done? I think we did. It is all glossy and white. If it looks powdery at all, then you're not finished, okay? Now with this particular vellum, I know in the past, if you emboss too long, sometimes your paper would kind of start to burn. I'm sure that that can happen with this too, but it's not gonna happen as fast. This is your favorite vellum. Do you recommend a heat gun versus an embossing tool? I think both are gonna be very similar. I know the one that I'm using here is the Ranger Heat It craft tool. The thing that I like about this one is that when I was doing the craft shows, it was one that allowed you to craft with other people and still be able to hear each other. Whereas I know some of the other ones are just really, really loud, but they do emboss faster. So that will just be your preference. And did you use anti-static? No, I did not. I did not. I stamped right onto it and added the vellum, the embossing powder. It doesn't stick too bad on this one. So I don't know if that's something that you're used to doing and you enjoy doing. You can continue it or try it without and see what you think, but I did not on this one. So next we're gonna go ahead and die cut this out. So we can use the classic rose die cut, of course, with the coordinating die. Now, when we're doing this, just to make sure that we are all on the same page, we actually are stamping off 9 of these large roses, and then there's a medium rose here, and we're stamping off 13 of those, okay? So we're stamping and heat embossing all of those on the vellum paper and then die cutting with the coordinating die. So let's just go ahead and cut this out. The blade is pretty much on the edge on these, so we'll just flip that over so we can see right through, line it up, and tape it down so it doesn't go anywhere. And the die cutting on this is basically the same as paper. Let me get this out of the way here. We'll just do a little quick cut. And this will go through any manual die cutting machine. Now, while we're doing that one, I do just want to let you know that the lilacs we're also going to be stamping off, and you're stamping off 2 of these, again on the vellum and heat embossing, and then die cutting them with the coordinating lilac die. And then you're also doing leaves. So the leaves then, this is the leafy accent. This is wonderful if you don't have it because it goes with all of your flowers. So with this one, we're going to be doing this leaf here with the curlies, and you will be doing 8 of these, once again on the vellum, heat embossing, and then with the coordinating die, cutting it out. You just placed an order yesterday, Carol. Well, hey, you're gonna get a coupon code today, so you might have some more items you want, right? Okay, so we've got this cut out. Let's go ahead and just pop these out. Okay. That is good to go there. Now, if you are someone that is thinking, well, you know what, a lot of times when it starts to flake off for me is when I cut it out. Well, I want to challenge you just a little bit. If you are using the color box pigment, if you are using the really high quality embossing powder, make sure that you are actually fully heat embossing, because that could be part of the problem. So let's go ahead and give these some color. Now with this one, again, we're going to use the leaf green, and I do want to show you 2 options on this. So with this one, today I am actually coloring on the front side. With this vellum, you can color on the front or the back. If you color on the front, it's going to give you a little bit more vibrancy. And I'm just doing the center and then just going out on the edges just a little bit. If you do it on the back, it's going to be a little bit more muted. So I kind of want you to be able to see both sides of that. And let's just see if we can really see that. You see how you can see the green a little bit heavier on this one? On the screen right now, I can't really see a lot of the green on this one. So if you're wanting, when I created this one, you can see just the vibrancy, they are much more green. If you don't want them to be quite as green, you could color on the back side. Okay? Today I am coloring on the front though, so let's go ahead and add a little bit of color on the front of that one. Okay, so those are colored. Now, while we're working with color, let's just go ahead and start to color the other pieces that we also stamped and cut out. So with our leaves, I'm actually coloring on this one on the front and the back. So I'm kind of daubing over my curls. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to catch them with the dauber and pull them off or snag the dauber. So just over the stems and over the curlies, I'm just kind of daubing my color on. Then I will go in and just kind of lightly brush over the leaves. Over the leaves. Okay, then when I go to the front, just because I wanted just a little bit more vibrancy, I'm just doing a little bit in the center of the leaves on the front. Definitely, you'll kind of notice the color differences as you're doing this, because I feel like the colors are maybe just a little bit skewed with the camera today. They look a little bit darker on there than maybe they are in person. Colleen, thank you. Thank you so much for noticing my necklace. These are the large peonies. We actually do have a necklace tutorial class that was something that was just like this, that was live, and it's something that you can still purchase. So that is something that's available. Okay, so the last thing that I want to go ahead and color are the lilacs. So what I did was I actually separated out my lilacs, and half of them I left and did not color at all for this. And then half of them I decided to use some magenta hue on. So you might say, hey, I love the magenta hue. I want a lot more pop of color. So maybe you will decide you want to do more than half. But for me, I wanted the variation with the white and the magenta. So again, we're just doing this on the back, just kind of going over all of these. With the way that the vellum looks, if you are more comfortable coloring this before you cut it out, you could definitely do that as well with these. Okay, so there we can see we've got all of those. Yes, Colleen, search that, absolutely. You'll enjoy it, and that particular class is actually interchangeable flowers, so it is nice and fun. So what we want to do now is we want to go ahead and start to shape our flowers and our leaves. I don't know if you've done a lot of flower shaping with us before. You can obviously shape with the deluxe flower shaping kit. The thing that I like about this is it does have all of the pieces that you're ever going to need. It's got your mat, it's got your stylus with the different sizes, and it even has a paper piercing mat for when you are popping holes in your flowers to do stamens. So today, the sizes that I'm going to be using for my shaping, I'm going to be using the 5mm, and I'm also going to be using the 2mm. So with what I'm doing today, the 5mm is a little bit larger, and I'm really going to be using this. I'm going to flip my leaves upside down. We'll start at the tip of the leaf. I'm sorry, let me get this a little better spot for you. Start at the tip of the leaf, and we'll just drag in with just a little bit of pressure. I don't need a lot of pressure. This is another spot where I know it can be tricky and concerning about whether you're going to end up popping through your vellum or kind of rubbing off your embossing powder. But again, I feel like if you just practice just a couple times, it kind of gives you an idea of where that pressure is. I actually did not lose any of my heat embossing powder. I could actually shape on the front of this if I wanted to as well, and it just gives me a little bit of quick shape. So that is the one that we're really doing by hand today. I did suggest the lilac mold today, and I also suggested the rose mold. Now you could easily do these by hand. It's just gonna take a little bit more time. And so let's just go ahead and let's put the roses through our mold to show you what that's like. So here's my mold here. When I open it up, if you're not familiar, they do line up perfectly. So this spot is just plain and it matches with this spot here. Otherwise, they have spots that are indented, and on the other side, they pop out, so they pop in place. So definitely take the cover off. And then with your roses, the great thing is that they all are going to fit in their own perfect spot. And with these, they kind of have little notches so you can kind of see where they're gonna go. Now, a lot of times with our molds, we like to tell you that you can do 2 to 3 deep. I really feel like you are going to have to experiment and see how that works with your vellum. Sometimes I feel like I can do 2 or 3 deep, and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I think that that's just the pressure of your machine, that you can just run that through. And even though we have that better quality vellum, we have the better quality embossing, sometimes you'll notice that there's still a little bit of remnants in your mold. That's okay, it does happen. We're not 100% fixing it, but sometimes. So when I pop these out then, let's just see if I can get it. It wants to stay. Did you lay the petals? Yes, so the image side was face down. I'm sorry, yes, that is how they perfectly fit in there. Okay, so you've got this done. Now I am gonna tell you, you can see on mine here, I did get just a little bit of a tear. And that's why I'm saying just try it singly, try it maybe doubly or triple, because sometimes I feel like depending on how they go in and the machine that you have, sometimes it works best with 3, sometimes it works best with just 1. But you do not have to spray water with this one, which is really nice. And then this lilac is going to be just the same technique. So these again will be face down in your mold. No water needed. And again, this is one, if you wanted to shape these by hand, you can. But the great thing about the lilac is that it stamps off so many at once. So it's so nice to be able to shape them all at once as well. So we'll go ahead and send this one through to shape these. There we go. Now when they come out, you're gonna see some of these. We've already got a little bit of shape. So we want to put the face side up. And this is where we're gonna go ahead and use our stylus with the 2mm, that's the smaller end, and just poke right in the center to pop these to life. Okay? So those are super fast and easy. Okay, so silly question. The 3D molds are a quicker way of shaping. Yes, exactly. So if you're someone that's saying, hey, I love flower shaping, but I have arthritis, or I don't have time to shape all of them at once, or you just want another option, that is why we have the 3D molds. It's just another option for shaping and something that can be a little faster to do multiples at once. Absolutely. I will say, Liz, I love the stylus and I love the molds. They create different looks, and sometimes it's nice even to go ahead, run it through the mold and go back and add more shape with your stylus. It can make a big difference in the kind of flower that you're trying to create. So that is up to you which way you like to do it. We have customers that are only going to use the molds now. We also have customers that just love doing them by hand that will never switch. So totally up to you. Okay, so next thing, we need to go ahead and start looking at how to create our roses, okay? I know that this is such a fun part to do. Now, with all of the numbers that we did with our leaves and with our roses and lilacs, we did quite a few of them, and what I like to say about that is that I feel like that is kind of a starting point. You might find as you're doing this that you don't end up using all of them, or you might end up saying, hey, I need more. So that will kind of just depend on how you're creating and how full you want to create this. So I am just taking my stylus again with the roses. We're just kind of going to go in the center. I'm just poking around just to give it a little bit of a bloom. There we go. And as we're doing this, we're just going to do all of them. You like the lines and the texture from the mold, Virginia? Absolutely. Just something a little different, isn't it? Liz, I don't know if I said it, and I don't know if you're familiar, but quite a few of our molds are very specific. So obviously the rose mold that I was showing you is only going to go with the classic mold. The lilac only goes with the lilac. But we do also have a basic mold that you can use with multiple flowers if you're wanting to kind of get started. There's also a few flowers that don't have molds that would use that really well. Okay, so we can already see it really just pops these to life. They are ready to go. Okay, so that's all of those. So now what we want to do is we want to take out our paper piercing little mat from our stylus kit. And what I'm using today is actually a golf tool. So we sell these in a set of 4. They're different sizes. On the one end, it kind of looks like a little club. It has a few little lines, and this is another option for flower shaping. And then on the other end, it's a nice tapered, basically paper piercer, and that's how we like to use it. So if you have a paper piercer, wonderful. However, if you are looking for something that you can pop a hole in and then push through to get a larger hole because of the taper, this is definitely the way to go. So we want to do that on all of the rose petals. The lilacs aren't going to need it. We'll do centers on those with prills. Okay, so just making sure. It's good to make sure that you are kind of in the center of the flower as you're doing this, because otherwise you could you know, kind of pop off the side, and that does happen, and if it does, we can fix that. That's going to be okay. Oh, Carol, you know what? That is a great suggestion. I don't know if it's something that we've considered or not, but I will definitely make sure that we pass on that information. Okay, so we have just about got all of these done, and of course you're gonna have a few more to do when you're doing it at home. Denise, I think you're thinking about the shaping mat. So we do sell the shaping mat separately, but at this point we don't have the small paper piercer one separate. So I think she's talking about the paper piercing mat. So maybe I'm wrong, Carol. If you're not talking about this one, if you're talking about this one, then we do sell these separate. Okay, so we've got all of those done. So now we want to go ahead and we want to start to use some stamens to create these. So what we're using today is we're going to be using the assorted pearl small with the gold. And then we're going to be using the assorted pearl medium, which are a little bit larger, and they're gold as well, okay? So what I want to do is I want to separate my flowers. I have quite a few different sizes, to be honest. Let me show you the different sizes that we ended up with. We had a large, then we had a medium, then we had a small, but then we actually had all of these little guys too, okay? I'm not using these today. If you want to go ahead and add them to your project, you can, or you can set them aside for another day and another project. So what you'll want to do is go ahead and separate out your different flowers, and the intention that we're doing here is we're going to be doing 3 layers of each for a flower. So 3 large, 3 medium, and 3 small. So that would be 3 different size flowers, okay? So what we'll do is we will use the medium stamens. Let's see if I can get them out here. And I'm going to do 2 per flower. And I'm using that for the large flower and the medium flower. So we'll do 2 of those. And then we'll use those assorted pearl small for the small flowers. And I'm going to do 3 of these. Now go ahead and tell me as we're doing this, do you use the stamens already? Do you struggle with the stamens? What are you wanting to learn about the stamens as we do this? Is the groove tool set that you use to pierce the hole? Yes, the groove tool set, yes. And it's a set of 4. Yes. Okay, so as we're getting started with these beautiful stamens, you have two options. So we do have stamens that have a wire to them. These two are not them. So you can use those though if you have one. The other thing though is that you can actually use a little bit of like a jewelry wire. Now I typically recommend something that is a little bit sturdier. If you don't have one that's really sturdy, then make sure it's longer so it's easier to pull through the center. You've never really used them. Okay, good. Okay, so what I want to do is, let's make sure that you can really see this. I've got my two and I'm folding my wire over top of them, okay? Then I'm going to bring them together. So there you can see they're hooked together. Now I'm doing this so that way we can pull our flower. Let's use this one. We can pull them through the center of the flower because of the hole that we made. And that's why I really like the groove tools, the golf tools, because it allows us to get a larger hole really easily, so I'm not struggling to pull them through. So now that I have that, let's make sure to add a little bit of glue, and I'm using hot glue today. I know that there's a lot of questions when it comes to hot glue versus the other glue. We love them both, but sometimes, depending on your flowers, sometimes it's just nice to have that really quick, fast setup. So then, as we do this, I'm gonna pull it down. A lot of times I like to offset them, but you are doing 3 layers. So like this one here, it didn't offset and I didn't correct it. That's okay, it's just gonna create more of a fullness. Yes, it's like you're creating the needle for sewing. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we're doing 3 layers on these. Okay, so as we're doing this, you can kind of pull them up a little bit, fluff them a little as they're drying together. But you can see that really, really creates a really beautiful full vellum flower. What gauge would you buy? I feel like the gauge I have at home is maybe 24 gauge wire, but I'm not 100%. Like I said, if it's thinner, definitely just use a little bit more because otherwise you're kind of struggling to pull it through. Whereas if it's longer, you can get it even though it's thin. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's make a medium and a small flower too. And for this project today, I just showed you the large one, and we're actually creating 2 large for this project. So we're moving on to the mediums, and again, we're using the same stamens from the assorted pearl medium pack. We're folding them over, using the wire, and then we'll pop it right through. You struggle with the hot glue and seem to get too much of it on the flower. Okay, so let's see. This one. Thank you, Liz. This was one that was my mom's. Okay, so let's talk about hot glue. Okay, so I don't know what kind of hot glue gun you have. This one here is a 2 temperature, so you can do high and low. Now, I have to say, I really, really love the high and low setting. I feel like the high setting stays gooier just a little bit longer. It does burn your fingers a little easier though, so you have to kind of decide. So what I like to do with this is I like to just add just a little dab on one side and then a lot of times a little dab on the other side. And I know sometimes it gets stringy, but usually the strings you can take away later. So then I usually kind of leave it upside down so it doesn't go anywhere and then squish together. I know that the hot glue gun technique is a little bit different, and sometimes you do have to do it a couple times to feel more comfortable. And honestly, sometimes you'll still have that random time where you're like, oh, I did it wrong or I got my finger. That's just kind of hot glue. But definitely if you can just work with it a little bit, it's really nice just because of how quickly it sets. So there's that one too. So this one is the medium. Okay. Yeah, I think 26 gauge probably would be fine. Yeah, you could absolutely use the dry clear glue. It just would take a little bit longer to dry, especially on the vellum, but you absolutely can, and it would work great. I mean, the dry clear glue, it dries very quickly, but it's just the way that the hot glue like attacks, it's just different. Okay, so with this one, we are switching to the assorted pearl small. We're doing 3 of them. They're double-ended just like the other ones. So again, we'll go ahead and take our wire over top and fold them up. Yes, you're welcome, Rachel. I'm glad that that's helpful. And this hot glue gun is AdTech. Okay, so we'll put that through. And with the medium flowers that we just finished, with that one we did 1, 2, 3 medium flowers, I believe, for this particular project. Again, you know, you can make it your own and you could decide, hey, I want 5 of those and I want 3 of one, or, you know, it makes a little bit of a difference on how your project looks and just makes it your own. Okay, so here goes the second one. The other thing is that if I hold it upside down like this, a lot of times my little petals don't get in the way, that they get stuck on that hot glue. Sometimes I find if I do it this way, all of a sudden one of my petals is in the hot glue. Denise, the wire, you can either get a jewelry wire, or you can use some of the wire from the wired stamens that we have. I kind of feel like it would make sense, probably more sense, to get a jewelry wire, so that way you can use your precious wired stamens for your flowers, but it's totally preference, you know. A lot of times you cut off the wire of the stamen anyway after you're done with it. Okay, so there we have those. Now with the small ones, we're going to be doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these, okay? So you're doing the exact same technique to finish all of those up. So I actually have them here. So we've got 2 of the large, and then we've got 3 of the medium, and then 6 of the small. Aren't those so pretty? Okay, so what we want to do next is we want to go ahead and we want to pull out our base again. So let's get a few of these things out of the way. So we have space for the base. And now we want to go ahead and start to layer these up to really create this look, because the flowers really make this what it is. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and start to work with our leaves. Now what I like to do with the leaves, they're kind of stuck to each other, so just be gentle when you're picking them apart. We have 8 of these. So we have plenty to work with if you like having lots and lots of leaves, or if you want them a little bit less. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these and I'm going to add some hot glue to the back, again, just for some quick setup. And I usually try and just hit the stems mostly. And then I'm going to put this kind of coming out down here by the circle. And you can maybe use your golf tool or your stylus sometimes when you're gluing your flowers or gluing something like this, just because you don't smash down the actual shape that you created. Okay, so then I'm going to take another one of these. What I'm doing here, and you will have to find what works best for you, because sometimes I will actually set them out first to decide where I want to put them, and other times I just build as I go. So you'll have to see how you like that. But what I'm doing with this one is I'm going to be cutting some of these leaves apart. So I'm just adding my full leaves first before I start cutting and gluing them that way. Okay. So let's do the next one. Kind of take a look like, where do we want this? Let's put this one kind of coming up out here. Again with the glue. I hope everybody is nourished. I know for us, we had lunch right before class. It looked like maybe some of you were getting your snacks ready to go so that you'd make it through. Sounding like a crafting party at some of your houses. So if you're doing a little bit of crafting and snacking, tell me what you're having. You'll have to eat a little extra for us. Okay, there's that one. Let's see. Do I want to add one more full one or not? To me, that's gonna stick out a little too much. Let me pull it up so you can kind of see that. It's sticking out a little too much for what I want there, and so I'm probably gonna cut this one down. So I'll take my scissors, and with a lot of these, I'm just cutting the tops off and using the tops. I do want to be sure that as I'm doing this, I'm saving one top for the kind of upper right-hand corner. And at that point, I think I will go ahead and cut here as well. Can you kind of see that? We'll just snip that part. So this one is now 3 pieces, but that way we have a couple pieces for that top corner. Don't know what to eat yet, maybe turkey. Hey, turkey sounds good. No snacks, just drinking some sangria. Hey, crafting parties, right? You gotta keep your momentum going. Okay, let's cut off the top of a couple more of these here. Okay, so I've got 2 tops cut off. Let's do 2 more. And that will be all of those. And of course, just like we're talking about, like these pieces that we aren't using, you could still trim them and use them for something else. So there are options. Okay, so a little bit more hot glue. And let's go ahead, let's add this one there. Kind of some a little everywhere, right? I'm just kind of trying to fill in the little spaces so that it looks nice and full. But on this one, I'm not trying to overfill with the greenery. Okay, so that side looks pretty good. You can see there we used 1 full piece, 1 full piece, and then 1, 2, 3 tops. Then on this other side, what do I have left? Got a couple pieces there. Just because of the way we've done this, we'll probably use some of those bottoms as well. So we have 1 more top here. And I'm gonna put this top kind of here towards the bottom. The beautiful die that we're using underneath there is kind of a little bit of a pattern for where you're going to be putting your flowers, but we don't want to completely cover it that you can't see it. So I'm going to go back into a few of these. These are the bottom parts that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and snip a few of these. And I'm kind of liking the ones on the left-hand side. So I'm going to take some of those, and we're just going to use those to fill in as well. If you are not quite as familiar with kind of adding these pieces, you're not feeling quite as comfortable with it, definitely I would recommend then to go ahead and lay them out before you glue them. So that way you feel comfortable and good about how much you're adding, or you can kind of have an idea that you want to add more beforehand. And when you do that, I would definitely recommend to do that with your flowers as well. Okay, so there you can see we've got those pieces there. I do still have 2 pieces up here that I haven't done yet. I'm probably not going to glue those down until we have the tags. So we'll just kind of leave that off to the side. And now we're ready to do our flowers. So it is important when we're doing this to go ahead and snip off the backs. We did use hot glue, so you can just snip that off. They're not gonna fall apart. I typically leave just a teeny tiny bit. You can kind of see like a little nub in there. That way you don't have to worry about it coming apart, but it shouldn't either way. But just make sure to do that on all of them because they're going to lay a little nicer on your cards, your layouts, anything that you're making. So just make sure we're doing all of them so they are ready to go. Now this is definitely going to be one of those times where I'm going to recommend that we lay them out, the flowers out, to make sure that we have them where we want them before we glue them down. Almost got all of these done. Okay. Okay, we've got those all. So we're going to be doing, we've got our 2 large flowers. We're going to do 1 large flower on the one side and 1 on the other. And then we have the 3 medium flowers. And with the medium flowers, we're actually going to put kind of 1 down below the large, 1 up above this large, and 1 over on this side. Now, you kind of want to build around and play with your sizes. You might find that you like more large, you like more small. There's not 100% like a right or wrong way to add these, but you kind of want to, usually when you're doing arrangements and you're doing them on both sides, you usually don't want both sides to be 100% the same or full. So let's put a small one there. We can put a small one down here. And then we'll put one up here, kind of one down there, and then we'll have two for the other side where the leaves are at the top. Okay, so how is that looking? Can you kind of see that? Let's see if you can kind of see that a little better. So it just really fills that out. Does snipping the wire ruin your scissors? You know, Linda, what we're cutting right now with these are threaded stamens. They're not actually wire, so these should not be a problem. If you are cutting wire and you have like a really nice scissors, you might want to maybe use a scissors that you don't love as much just in case. But with what we're doing today with the assorted, with both of these are threaded, so they don't have wire in them, so you're fine. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and start gluing these down. And if it's not quite where you like it, then just go ahead and move them around a little bit. Now, as I'm doing this, a lot of times, I will say, a lot of times I will kind of maybe hold them just for a couple seconds, because sometimes maybe they'll want to lean one way or the other. And if you don't want that, then you'll just want to hold it for a couple seconds to make sure that it's where you want it to be. A little bit of extra glue. Let's do, there we go. A couple seconds holding that one. And what you'll notice on this particular one that we're doing, oh, I should show you, this was one of them that had a little bit of a tear in it, but it ended up being the bottom petal, so you can't even see it. So nice when you can hide little mistakes like that, isn't it? So the idea with the vellum that we're using, I don't know if I said this or not, but the idea with the vellum that we're using and using the higher quality to do this, it's not going to 100% stop accidents from happening, but it works much, much better, and you're not going to see that same flaking that you've seen before. Okay, so there, that side is good to go. Let's add our glue for this side. Okay. So if this is something that you are super excited about and making, is this something you're going to make for your own home, or are you going to make this as a gift for a friend or family member? I would love to hear, is this something that you'll do a birthday party photo in? Is this something that you'll do a trip, maybe for your dog or your kitty cat? Tell me what you're going to put in this guy. And let's put that one. There we go. You can see this one, it's kind of a nice little cluster, or kind of a, you can see that? Large, medium, small. Clusters very nicely together. Okay, and then of course, we have to add some beautiful little lilacs. But before we do the lilacs, let's go ahead and let's do our tags, so that way we can go ahead and glue down the top flowers as well. So that way the lilacs will add last before we add our frills. Picture of a trip. You're gonna make it, make a couple of them. You have one for your mom and one for your aunt. That'll be really nice. It's a nice gift, isn't it? That'll be a really fun gift. Okay, so let's talk about tags. We are going to be using the arrows and banner, and with this one here, we are using the smallest one, and you're cutting out one of the smallest ones with the deluxe flower shaping paper, and then one with actual paper from the Floral Fashionista paper. So it just gives you a little bit of a pink look. And then we're also using the album tags and accents. I don't know about you, if you don't have this one, this is definitely a must-have. There are so many really great pieces in this, but the one that we're using today is going to be this one here. So there's two of these kind of oval, top oval tags. You're using the larger one. And again, you're cutting one out with just a regular cardstock and one out with the lovely paper. Now on this one here, we actually already went ahead and stamped it. It's with all my love, and it came out of the For My Friend sentiments, this one here. Now I will show you, there are 10 pieces in here, so definitely this is a great one for all of your cards. It has, hey friend, I'm so grateful for you, it's been a while, I miss you. Lots of different options on here. If you are creating something that's a little bit different for this piece, you can use a different sentiment. That's totally fine. But what we'll do is we'll add a little bit of glue on the back of this one, glue it onto the cardstock, and this is going to create something that's just a little bit sturdier. And then we recommended that you have some sort of like a twine or a ribbon. So I have mine here. This one is kind of a little bit of a, I don't know, kind of a butter or a yellow. It still goes really nicely with this particular color scheme. So I'm just gonna pull this through. Oops, I like it to be even. I know we can cut it down, but I don't know about you, I like it to be even. Okay, so we'll just tie this. Okay, so we've got that. We'll create a bow out of it. Okay, sometimes you have to play with it to make sure that you're getting the loops where you want it, right? Do I have it? Not quite yet. I want it tight. Okay, so there I've got that, okay? So because that's ready to go, I'm going to add a little bit of my hot glue on the back, and I like to add it just at the top where the actual string is, so that way it's gonna keep the string in place even if for some reason it would come untied. And then I'm gonna tuck this up here in the corner so it kind of hangs down on the green a little bit. There we go. And then we can go ahead and take these little pieces of greenery and tuck that around. So the one will go kind of up at the top there, just a little ways. And let me pull that up so you can see it a little better. So just a little ways from the tag, and then we'll put the flower right on top. Oops, you see that? Kind of, there we go. And then we're going to put the other leaf kind of here by the green with a flower. Okay, so I'm gonna glue those. You're gonna put a trip of Ireland in this. Oh my goodness, I bet that was such an amazing trip. How fun. Okay, so there's that one. Let's make sure to glue this one down with the flower. I think we're doing really, really good on time. It looks like we have a little bit less than half an hour. And what we have left to do is add our lilacs and add some frills. And so definitely if there's some questions that you haven't gotten answered yet, just make sure to pop those in. And while we're kind of in this in-between, we're about to do the lilacs, I want to remind you again, after class there's going to be a link available to go ahead and leave a review on this class. I definitely recommend you just click the link right away and leave your review. It's something that's going to help us know how our classes are doing, kind of what you're enjoying about them, but it's also something that's going to help your friends and crafting family know more about the classes and might encourage them to try a class that they weren't sure about as well. And if you make sure to leave your review by July the 5th, you will actually be entered to win a $100 shopping spree. So everybody wants to win something like that. So definitely after class, make sure to pop on there right away to get your review in. You don't want to forget in case you're having kind of a fun, lazy weekend. It would be awful to forget and remember the next day. So let's go ahead and work on adding our lilacs to go ahead and kind of fill out these flowers. So I've got quite a few here. I'm gonna kind of set them next to me so I have an idea of how many I have. It's okay if I don't use all of them. You might not use all of them, and that's fine. So I'm gonna grab my stylus so that way I can use this. When I glue it down, I can just poke right in the center. But otherwise, let's see here. I'm gonna go ahead and grab one of my, I'm just gonna call this one pink. We all know that it's magenta hue, but let's just call it pink. And I'm gonna maybe pop one off to the side here. Again, we're just kind of going to just poke there a little bit. And let me see if I can just bump this up just a little bit so that way you can see this a little bit better. I don't know if that helps. So let's see. A little better angle for adding those. Does that help a little? It might. Okay. So this one is white, so you can kind of go back and forth between the different colors. I'm just adding just a very small dab of the hot glue and then kind of going in and saying, hey, where do I want to add this? So this one I'm adding kind of here at the bottom. And these are just beautiful little fillers. Might have been too much. I'm going to pop this one up in the top corner. These will look great in your she shed. Yeah, at the beach. Oh, awesome. I assume your she shed is your crafting shed, right? Okay. We'll just keep adding a few of these. There's quite a few of them. So you just kind of pop them in little areas that you feel like maybe need it. Like what's an area that feels like maybe it has a hole? I'm even going to pop that one off of that top part, kind of coming down, cascading down. And I just bounce back and forth with my colors to make sure that I'm getting them. Pop that one in there. Okay. Go ahead and tell me while I'm doing this, tell me what you're most excited about for this weekend. Is there a special food that you typically make kind of for 4th of July? Is this just kind of a time you relax? Just go ahead and tell me what you like to do, what you're looking forward to kind of as we finish out this week and move into the weekend. Probably, I'm assuming you're going to be making, kind of crafting this project, right? Pull my hair back there so you don't see that. And what do you think? Do you think you would use every single little lilac and fill it out? Or do you think maybe you would just use them sparingly? Your mom is coming from Pennsylvania and you get to see her, Liz? Oh, that's so exciting. How long has it been since you've seen her? Has it been a while? I'm gonna tuck one of these right in there. Okay, so I'm kind of looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, this side is really looking like it's filled out really nicely. Let me see if you can see that a little bit better in there. You can kind of see I've got some little white ones here. I've got some little pink ones kind of peeking out. And again, I think that the green is looking a little more vibrant on your screen than maybe it actually is in real life. But you'll just have to see when you make it yourself, right? So let's go ahead and finish off this other side. So I'm gonna kind of pop some of them coming out. I do have a lot more leaf on this side, so I definitely wanna be sure to drag a few of these out. You're really loving the vellum flowers. Good, I'm so glad. So glad. The vellum really changes the look, doesn't it? Wow, Liz, you haven't seen her since January and she turns 85. So it's kind of a birthday celebration, huh? That's exciting. You're gonna make one of these and you're gonna hang out with your kids. That's awesome, Barbara. Isn't that so fun? Yeah, Denise. I know, it's kind of a weird life right now, isn't it? That's why we have crafting, right? Give us something exciting to still be doing inside by ourselves. Okay, quiet home for you, Teresa. Sometimes it's nice to just have the quiet. Sometimes not so much. Oh, Margaret, your fireworks were canceled. Oh, that's always kind of sad. Jackie's streaming Hamilton. Oh, how fun. Hey, I think I'm going to do that too. I'm staying around the house and Joy is gonna be cooking out. Awesome. Well, it sounds like you're gonna have a good weekend, no matter what you do. And hopefully you'll get some crafting time in as well. Okay, so we're just continuing on this one. Like I said, we're just kind of popping these in the different places to finish this out. I've got quite a few of these still left. So again, you can add as many or as few as you like. I have a few more that I do want to add to really finish this so you can see the fullness of it. There, I reached for my golf tool. Okay. Definitely when you're working with the smaller flowers, I do feel like it takes just a little bit more time because they're so tiny. So kind of to put them in the place where you want them, make sure you're not gluing your finger. It takes a few more seconds. Okay. I would say the way that this looks, maybe 2 more flowers and the flowers will be good to go. And since these are not a changeable photo, I mean, you could do some things to make it changeable, but because of that, you can see I actually am even gluing a couple of these flowers onto the photo. Definitely one there. Oops, got stuck. Okay, I think that this has really finished out really nicely with those lilacs. So let's go ahead and do one more tag. And this one I'm using the Just For You sentiments, and this might be something new for you, maybe it's not, but the For My Friend, that's what I'm going to use, but I'm only going to use the friend side. So there's a couple different ways you can use this. I'm doing this on our arrow. So let's get these out of the way here. So we've got our arrow, and we're using archival, and this is jet black, and this is what we used for the other tag as well. And you know, one thing I didn't do, I forgot on this one, and it's something that you still can do. Let me just show you. On the one that was the sample, I actually kind of did a little bit of an edging with the magenta hue on both of these. And I don't know if you noticed, but I did not do that on this one. Now you could still go ahead and take your little sponge in there and add a little bit if you wanted to just add a little bit. I would kind of take it and you take your finger so that way you're not getting it on everything if you don't want to. But there you can kind of see, hopefully, it gives you a little bit of color just to finish that off. Okay, so in order to do these, now you can do a little bit of distressing on your arrow if you want. You don't have to, but you can. The arrow is going to be pointing to the left. So let's go ahead, oh, that was close. Almost went off the table. We'll go ahead and take our stamp, put it on our block. Now, I feel like there's a couple ways you can do this. You could actually take and put a little bit of tape over the part that you don't want, and then add your ink. Have you ever done this before? Add your ink, and then take the tape off and stamp it. That actually works really, really nicely. The other thing you can do, I mean, you could go ahead and just make sure that you're only inking that part, but sometimes it's hard to only get just part of it. So I feel like the tape really, really does a nice job to make sure that you're only getting what you want. And then we'll glue these together. And again, this is just going to make just a little sturdier tag for you. Okay, so there we've got that. We will glue this on. And I'm going to just kind of take and bend it just a little bit. So the friend part kind of has a full belly. And then I'm going to take the tags, the end of the tags, and kind of go up just a smidge. We will add a little bit of hot glue on both ends. Just a little bit, not a lot. And then you will kind of have to position this. It could be a little bit different just based on kind of where things lined up. So there you can see that. So it works out really nicely there. And this friend stamp, I feel like it works really nicely for your sister, your mom, your aunt, your spouse, an actual friend. So lots of different people that can work nicely for. So one of the last things we want to do is we want to make sure that we've got all of our distressing on, and we also want to be sure to put our prills on. So one thing you'll notice on this, with these lovely, lovely little white guys that are peeking out, we can go ahead and take our dauber and add a little bit of color to those if we want, just for a little extra something. And then let's go ahead and do our prills. Now the prills that we're using today, we're going to be using all the same color, and this is mini prills, so they're kind of, I would say, you can kind of see those, more of like a white or off-white, and the prills are lots of different sizes, so they work really, really well for centers of flowers. So what we'll do is we're doing these for our lilac. So I like to do just a little bit of glue with the Dries Clear in the center of each of these. And then I typically do just a couple sections at once because they still kind of bounce around depending on where you put them. So I've got those in there, and then we want to try and save as many as we can. But when you go to dump them, just because these are larger, they kind of go a little bit of everywhere. So if this is something that you feel comfortable adding the centers before you glue them, you could totally do that. That would work. Now, one other place that we're going to be adding some of these prills are actually onto the background. Now, I try and be a little bit more careful with how I'm doing this. Let's see. I'm going to kind of just add a few little dots some different places on here. And the intention then is to kind of collect some of them. So again, we'll kind of get this in order. I'll put some of these on there. Now, if you find that you're getting a cluster that's just too large, you can just run your finger over it to take a few of them off. We're just trying to give a little more texture to this look. So you just get a few here and there. We can do that on the top as well. And even you can add a little bit maybe onto part of, I would say the distressed part of your paper, just to create just something that looks a little bit different. Visually, just looks a little different. Okay. Let's pull this around so you can see this. And make sure to get them on the places with the glue. See, there's some there. Catching some there. You could also sponge these, and we could sponge quite a bit of glue and add the glitter and the prills at once. It's just that they would kind of tend to mix a little bit. So you'll have to decide how you like doing that the best. But this is just really finishing off this beautiful piece. I would love to hear what you're thinking and when are you going to start to make yours. So as we're just finishing this class out, we're finishing just a little bit early. So once again, I want to remind you that with a purchase of $100 or more before July 5th, if you use code 135314, you'll get a free die. So if there's some items that you know you're still wanting, you're going to want to pop on over to heartfeltcreations.us right away. Make sure to get those in your cart. Put in the code 135314 to take advantage of that special. Also, make sure to leave your review. There'll be a link that you can click to leave your review, and make sure to do that again before July 5th. I don't want you to miss out. You could be the winner of the shopping spree. You never know, right? So make sure to do that. And I don't know if you know this or not, but we have opened up registration for next month's class. It's going to be at 1 p.m. again. And Tracy, could you go ahead and pop the date of that? I'm not sure that I have the date. I know that it's at 1 p.m. and it's the 3rd or the 4th, Enrique? The 4th. Okay, it is going to be August 4th at 1 p.m. is going to be the next class, and registration is open for that now. So definitely you're going to want to hop on over and register for this class. Let me show you. I know you always love to see the sneak peek for the next month, right? Okay, so the next month is going to be an 8x8 Tender Moments Insta album. So let's go ahead and just take a peek at this real close. Real quick before we go. So this is something, even if you are saying, hey, I don't have a baby to make this for, that is totally fine, because this is gonna teach you some great basics of how to do the 8x8 Insta album. So as we pop this open, she has made this magnetic, look at these fun little tags. They're just tiny, they pop out. We're using some beautiful dies. When I open this up, make sure I got my inks out of the way. There are lots of beautiful flips that happen with this album. Whoop. And they flip out and up. Just tons and tons of fun ways to create a memorable book. You can see some of these pop out. These are really cute. These are the arrows and they have photos on them. What do you think of this album? Is this a class that you're going to sign up for right away? It's super fun, using lots of beautiful decorative dies. On this side, we also have some other awesome places where we have tags that pop out. Lots and lots of interactive pieces. This part flips up. So many ways. Hi, Marilyn. Yes, you know what? I've heard that before. That's funny. Well, I take it as a compliment. Thank you. So this is the next online class, the 8x8 Tender Moments Insta album. It is something that you can register for now. August 4th, 1 p.m. is going to be when you can take this class. It's going to be lots of fun. I hope to see you there. Emma Lou will be back teaching this. Thank you so much for joining me today and taking this class with me, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. We'll see you next time. Bye.